What comes to mind when you hear the Crusades? It was a period of great violence, of grand Mediterranean castles and paintings during the Renaissance, and many famous battles fought for Jerusalem. But what is the true history of the Crusades, and what are its modern implications? This is the Crusades. Historians believe that there were 9 major crusades. The first crusade was announced by Pope Urban II in 1095 in Clermont, France, and the final crusade was called the Lord Edward's Crusade. The Lord Edward's Crusade was such a devastating failure that it led to the final retreat of Crusade forces in the Levant. The final stand of Crusader forces in the Middle East was documented in the fall of Acre by an anonymous knight.
The city was filled with refugees who had fled there for safety, so numerous that they could scarcely find a place to stay. The enemy pressed upon them so hard that they could not rest day or night. The defenders, though valiant, were overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and relentless assaults, leading to great despair among the people.
The fall of Acre in 1291 signified the last time a Crusader kingdom would control territory in the Levant. Its fall signified the complete collapse of Christianity as a driving political force in the Middle East until the era of colonialism several centuries later. But hold on. Beyond the famous battles and the political turmoil of the situation, the Crusades have had a lasting impact on Christianity itself. The Crusades have shaped religious thought, structure of the papacy, and further divided the existing tension between Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Western Latin Roman Catholic Christianity. Pope Urban II's call to arms in 1095 not only launched a military force to the Middle East, but it also transformed the Catholic Church into a driving political force that would dominate Western Europe for the next few centuries. The crusading movement also strengthened the idea of a holy war, violence in the name of faith. This belief would shape centuries of Christian ideology, influencing everything from later European conquests to missionary efforts across the world. But the Crusades also left scars. They fueled religious intolerance, furthered animosity between Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and even led to further conflicts within Christianity itself, such as the sacking of Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade. The point that I want to make overwhelmingly clear is that the Crusades have been an expression of political and religious tension that will always exist in the Middle East. Whether that is present tension between Jews and Muslims that we see in the state of Israel and Palestine, whether that is Islamic extremism in places like Iraq and Syria, or whether that is Christian colonialism a few centuries ago, I want to make clear that they are all the same thing. So I went and talked to an expert, somebody who could truly tell me about the history of the Crusades and its effect on Christianity. Hi.
Hey, it's Priscilla.
Would you state your name and occupation, please?
First of all, my name is Priscilla Lindberg, and I am an upper school history teacher, and I have been an upper school history and English and humanities teacher for the last 25 years, so my whole adult life.
Sparkles and champagne.
What were the primary motivations for people to join the Crusades?
There were quite a lot of motivations, and at the heart of those motivations are about profit. So European men were looking to gain land and prestige, and Europe was pretty crowded at that point. A lot of the land was owned by wealthy landowners such as the church or kings, landlords specifically, and those available plots of land had been given out as fiefs already. And so there was this growing number of men in Europe who had no way to acquire power in their society as it was defined at the time. And so the Crusades offered a way for these men to leave Europe and move out in order to get territory for themselves.
What ultimately contributed to the failure of the Crusades?
I mean, a lot of those things you can imagine, when I talk about what the motivations are, you can imagine the inverse of that is going to be contributing to why it fails, right? So if people are being kind of forced to go on crusade, or if they're going of their own free will, but they're going to go for selfish reasons to get land for themselves, or money, or advantage for themselves, you can imagine that it creates a culture of competition, a culture of corruption and disunity. So this is a very disunifying enterprise. Okay, there's no sense of collective organization around this. It's individual lords who may or may not heed the call for crusade, going out into towards the Holy Land, which is the Middle East. And it was really a very individualistic, competitive thing. So it wasn't like lords were all joining together and planning this to go out. It was like individual households sending their men to go out and get what they could before other people could get what they could, right? So there is going to be competition and disunity among European crusaders.
So, how did the Crusades affect how Christians thought of Jews and Muslims?
Obviously, for Christians, for the Europeans, they're going to view, first of all, they're going to view the Muslims as the ultimate enemy. They're religious rivals, they're military rivals, they're economic rivals, okay, because the other economic power in the world at that time is going to be the caliphates, right? So they're demonized in all of the Christian writings. They're seen as heretics. They're seen as like satanic figures, and it's going to set up a permanent sense that the Muslims are the absolute enemies of Christendom, or of people who practice Christianity in the lands where Christianity is predominantly practiced. So Islam and Christianity are going to be set up as permanent rivals. But for Christians, they're also going to see Jews as enemies, as an antagonizing force. And they're going to be persecuted. So the Crusaders are going to go through Europe. They're going to murder Jews. They're going to burn shtetls to the ground, and to also see them as enemies of the faith. Okay, anti-Semitism has its roots really during the Crusades. Like the idea of Jews as an enemy of Christians is going to really take shape during the Crusades.
And after the crusading period, were there any significant attempts to restart a crusade or launch another one?
It's a great question. So the last major crusade was in 1291. That's like the last official crusade. But there's going to be that idea of crusade is going to be lodged in the European thinking, European Christian thinking, for hundreds of years. Mentally, that is still with us, this idea of crusade, unfortunately, and it leaks into our language in really inappropriate ways.
And in what ways did the Crusades affect the self interpretation of what it meant to be Christian during the medieval period?
So I guess I've kind of answered that in a way, but just the idea that it reinforces this idea of a Christian identity as a monolithic single vision of what it means to be a Christian, and that Christianity is a kind of conflict with other ideologies such as Judaism, such as Islam, fill in the blank. And that overtakes any kind of European rivalries, right? That this idea there's this bigger enemy out there, that might unite us. But they transform faith into locality. They transform it into like a political entity. Okay, so that's the effect that the Crusades are going to have on Christianity.
What are the lasting cultural and political impacts of the Crusades on our modern world?
Well, immediately after the Crusades does have the effect of leading us to the discovery of the New World, which has its blessings and its curses. It brings us, of course, a new world to learn about, from the European and old world perspective of Africa, the Middle East, and Europe and Asia. But it also, of course, devastates those civilizations in the Americas. In my opinion, I mean, there's all kinds of answers to this question, but the one that is the most important to me is that the Crusades established and never disestablished this belief that Christianity was like a treasure to protect and to foist upon others in some way. It led us to decades, hundreds of years of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia that we're still dealing with the consequences of today. We have that today in American politics, this idea that Christianity needs to be the only religion of the country, this drive to put the Ten Commandments in the classrooms and public schools. I mean, if you follow any current events today in terms of where what we call Christian nationalism comes from, that's a legacy, in my opinion, of the Crusades, this idea that Christianity could dominate and close out other religions, and that other Abrahamic faiths are somehow in competition and are somehow opposing forces of Christianity. And that just leads to bigotry and hate and racism, and it destabilizes our world.
Thank you for taking the time out of your day to help me with this project.
Yeah, and good luck to you.
Today, the legacy of the Crusades still linger. The Crusades marked the beginning of what we know to be military orders. Many knights that fought in the Holy Land took traditional monastic vows, communal poverty, chastity, and obedience, but also committed to violence on behalf of the Christian faith. The tradition of military vows would persist through European armies, impacting many aspects of the structure of modern Western militaries today. Overall, the Crusades have had such a major impact on our world today. Thank you for watching this video, and please don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.